So now let's start where we left off. Last time we made the B, the first B for baby, and the background page for it. So now let's take a look at A and talk about a couple issues that are going to come up with this one. So if you remember, we outset all of these letters to make them a little bit bigger. So now if we take a look at this A, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, again, Control and then the scroll on your keyboard. You can see that at the bottom it's a little bit kind of scrolly, a little bit wavy. That's because if we look at the original letter A up here, you can see that it's got some kind of scraggly edges. And so this one is just going to be emphasized as it gets bigger. So let's take a look at this and talk about how to fix it. First, I'm going to change this to a path, so path, object to path, and then I'm going to select my nodes key, or my nodes button here. It's the second one at the top. So you can see it shows me where all of my paths are. You've got a couple options. You can move these around, you can delete them if you don't think you need them, and you can just kind of play around here. I want to smooth this out, so I'm going to delete a couple of these, and as you can see, it's kind of helping smooth it out. I want this one gone as well. So that smooths it out pretty good. Over here I'm going to come back and do the same thing. Maybe get rid of this one and see what happens. That smoothed it out pretty good. Right here, maybe I'm just going to adjust kind of how that looks. And you can zoom in if you need to see what's going on. Let's see. That's a little bit smoother. Same here, I'm just going to kind of smooth this thing out. Okay, that looks pretty good. And again, I'm zoomed in really close. When the Cricut cuts this out, it's going to be quite smooth because it can only be so exact. So that's looking a lot better than it did before. I like the way that looks. And now I'm going to go back, zoom out here, and make my next page. I'm going to change this color just so I can kind of tell it apart from this other one. And you can see it's kind of behind here. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. I just need to decide, you know, about where I want it to be. I want it to overlap about like that. That looks pretty good. So now I have to make my rectangle shape that's going to be the page. And I want it to be the same height as this rectangle shape. So if you recall from the last video, we're going to use our Bezier tool. Make sure that the straight lines are selected, and I'm going to use the corners to help me out. And you can go over as far as you want. Remember, this is going to overlap, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go right here, go to the intersection, and make sure it hits the intersection, just so that it's nice and straight. So there's that piece. And you can see it's over the top of the B. It doesn't matter. We can move it to the top or the bottom. This makes it pretty easy to see. That looks good. I want my A and my rectangle, so hit Shift and select both of them. You can see they overlap, but I'm going to do Path, Union, just like we did before, so that they are all together. So it's one piece, as you can see. And if I line it up so that it matches the corners right here, you can see how it's going to overlap. Now I'm going to bring this A over so I can check out what it's going to look like all lined up. Let's see if I like the way it looks, and let me change the color on that. So here's B and A so far. I'm liking that. That looks pretty good. The next one I'm going to do is the next B, and here comes the trick. I've already done a B. It's already done and ready to go. All I need is this page part to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this B. I don't need it because I've already got one here. I'm going to copy, so Control C, and then paste it, Control V. You can see it's the exact same. Well, I want it to be bigger, so I'm going to shift it, Object, lower to the bottom because I want it behind, so I can kind of see where I want it. And in this case, I even want the letter to be copied. I've already got one over to the side here, so I'm just going to use this one, because that will help me kind of see where the overlap is. Let me change that color. Let's make it it looks like we're doing shades of pink here, so I don't know, maybe something like this, the same that it was for the last one. So now I'm going to select both of these. Oops, I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit to catch the outline box and the B. Alright, so I can move them at the same time. And again, I'm going to lower it to the bottom just so it can go behind this A so I can see what it'll really look like. And now I have to decide where I want the B to overlap. And I'm thinking maybe something about like that is looking pretty good. Okay, so now I get to adjust the shape of this path. So I'm going to move it to the top just for a second, raise to top, just so I can see where it is, and I'm going to select my nodes button. So you can see the nodes at the corners. I'm going to just adjust it so it goes all the way to where the other corners are. Because if you remember, as this book, I'm going to bind it here on this edge, so I want to make sure that everything goes there. So now you can see this third page. The second B is actually quite long. Looks like it's about, 2-3 inches long, and then the B is at the end. So if I, again, object, lower to the bottom, you can see what it looks like. And I know now that it goes all the way to the end, whereas this one is shorter, but it's the exact same shape and size. So that's a little trick to save you some time. When you've already done some work, you can just adjust the nodes. So far I've got B, A, B, and I just want to finish up with my Y since I've got it here ready to go. Now this one's a little bit tricky because as you can see, we've got an open space here, and once we make our rectangle, depending on how far you go, you might still have a hole there. So you can decide if you want there to be a hole or if you want there to not be a hole. And there's a couple ways to deal with that. First, let me adjust this so I can do exactly what I've done before. I'm going to move it to the back, object, lower, and I'm just going to kind of adjust where it is. I think that kind of looks pretty good. I'm going to move this upper letter over just so I can double check, see what I think of it, and again I'm going to lower this. So lower one more so it's behind the B. Okay. So I'm kind of liking that. If I select just the Y's, I can adjust it as I want. Maybe I want to see a little bit more of that Y. About like that. Looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to move that off to the side. And this one now, again, I'm going to have to make a rectangle that's going to fit all the way over. So using the Bezier tool, select the corners, and just kind of go over to where you think will work for you. Okay, so there's my shape. As you can see, I've got this center part that I need to figure out. So there's a couple ways of doing it. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to just keep the Bezier tool selected, and I'm just going to create another shape, and this time I don't even care if it's very straight or not, to cover it up. And now I'm going to make sure I select all three of those shapes. Now see, I've selected this little rectangle, the Y, and the box. Now I can't remember if I changed this Y to a path or not, so I'm going to do that now. Object to path, and then union. So as you can see, there's no more shape here in the middle. It's all one shape, and if I go to nodes, you can see where all the nodes are. They're just along the outside. So it's one shape altogether without the cutout. And if I bring the Y over on top of it, I can see what it's going to look like. Let me change that color just so it kind of matches with everything we're doing here. Maybe like that. Okay. So now I'm going to move this, and if you select it kind of close to this corner, when you move, it'll make that corner adjust when you move it to the grid. So here's my board book. It's looking pretty good. I like where everything's at. I can't remember now if I changed these top stickers to paths, and it doesn't really matter. In fact, I haven't. If you select it at the bottom, you can see it's a text still. It's not a path. So I'm just going to select everything. It's a little overkill, but it doesn't matter. Path, object to path. Now everything has changed to a path, which remember means that it's just an outline shape that the Cricut can cut out. And if you want to go to View, Display Mode, and then Outline, you can see where the cutout shapes are. And if you want to, you can kind of move this around so you can see there's the B, and then, let me select it here, there's the B page. Okay, let me undo that and go back to what it was looking like. And I like to go back to the normal mode just so I can see everything a little bit easier. So there's my board book. It's all done. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit now. You can see if I select everything at the top here, the width is 6.192 on the entire thing, everything that's selected, and the height is 2.9, so almost 3 inches. I might want this bigger, and since this is a scalable vector, I can do that. So I'm going to lock, I'm going to select this, it's going to change both the width and the height at the same time. And I can either use my mouse to change the height and width, or I can say, okay, I want the width to be 11 inches altogether. So it's going to adjust it and keep it proportional. Now if you unlock it, you could, if you wanted to, adjust it so the letters are taller or chubbier. I mean, really it's up to you. I'm just going to adjust it to the way it was. Let's do something like this. So I'm going to say lock it, everything's selected, and I want, yeah, let's say the width, I want it to be 10. So that looks pretty good. Ultimately, again, it doesn't matter because it's scalable. So even after you get it into your Sure Cuts a Lot, you're still going to be able to scale this and make it whatever size you want. I'm going to just change that color because it's kind of bugging me. So it matches a little bit better with the others. Okay. So here's my baby board book. Make sure you save it. So Control S. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm going to go to File, Export Bitmap. Now remember, saving this, we're saving it as a SVG file. But Windows Explorer, when you open up your folder, isn't going to be able to show you what that looks like. So if I go back here, this is my Ben book, and if I go to the Ben folder, this is what the file looks like. I can't see what it looks like. Even if I do an extra large view, it can't give me a preview. So back to my document here, if I go to my baby, I'm going to go File, Export Bitmap, and I'm going to select at the top the drawing. So only the shapes that are drawn are going to be exported at 72 dpi, so this isn't at a very high resolution, but it doesn't matter because I'm not using this for anything other than a preview. And I'm just going to hit export. Okay, so if I go to the folder that I saved this under, mine is saved under Documents and Inkscape and Word Books. I mean, you put it wherever you want, and baby. Here's what it looks like. This is the SVG file, the original file that I saved, and this is the PNG file that is a bitmap preview. So I can see what this file is without having to open it, which makes it quite a bit easier when you're dealing with SVGs. So we're going to stop there. Next time we're going to come back and talk about how we're going to use this with our Sure Cuts a Lot and how we can set it up so it's easy to share with people and how we can scale it and everything. So lots of stuff coming up. If you have any questions, please post to the blog and come on back. We'll finish up this project.